Alright folks, so the new Garmin Fenix 7 and the new Garmin EPIX are Garmin's latest high-end GPS smartwatches, and they share tons in common, but they have different names. On the outside, the cases are basically exactly the same. They both have touchscreens, they both have Garmin's updated 4th generation elevated heart rate sensor, they have the same enormous list of sport profiles to choose from, they provide tons of training feedback like the new real-time stamina and visual race predictor features, and they all have contactless payments, Wi-Fi, maps, and music. So why did they choose a different name for the EPIX? Well, it pretty much all comes down to the displays. The Fenix 7 has their tried and true transflective type display that's optimized for extremely good readability in direct sunlight, as well as being very efficient when it comes to battery life. Where with the EPIX, it has an AMOLED display, which may not be as good outdoors, but it's still very good just because it's so bright. But there's a compromise with that display, and that's where AMOLED displays simply consume more battery life. But when you compare the battery life of the EPIX to the mid-size Fenix 7, which shares the same 47mm case size, the battery life isn't necessarily that far off. And what's even more interesting is when you compare the EPIX battery life to the previous generation Fenix 6, where in some scenarios, the EPIX actually has better battery life. So if you're a Fenix 6 owner, considering whether to choose a Fenix 7 or the EPIX, I think this information could be good for you. So I already have super in-depth videos of both the new Fenix 7 as well as the new Garmin EPIX, which I'll have linked down in the description below, which go over everything new with these devices. So I'm not going to try to repeat myself too much in this video, where I'm going to try to keep this video more about the differences between the EPIX and the entire line of Fenix 7 watches. And it's not just that one has an AMOLED display and the other doesn't, but it's more about the actual experience about using these displays and how they actually feel on a day-to-day basis, as well as using them outdoors for outdoor activities. So yeah, we're going to talk about some feelings today. But I'll also be talking about those battery life differences in a whole bunch of different scenarios, and then I'll kind of wrap things up by talking about which one may be right for you. And I'm not talking about just EPIX versus mid-size Fenix 7. I'll also be talking about the Fenix 7S as well as the Fenix 7X. So I'll be talking about all the watches in this video. And if the information in this video does help you out at all, don't be shy about hitting that like button down below. It's a small little thing that you can do that'll help this video and the channel quite a bit, and I appreciate it. Okay, so first up, let's talk about size options. So the EPIX comes in one size with a 47mm case, which is the same size as the mid-size Fenix 7. The Fenix 7 line of watches, on the other hand, come in three different sizes: the 7S at 42mm, the 7 at 47mm, and the 7X at 51mm. But the 51mm size option is only available on their solar and sapphire solar versions of the Fenix 7s. And here's a shot of me wearing all the sizes, and I have a 187mm circumference wrist, so feel free to pause on the screen. And by the way, I do tend to prefer the mid-size 47mm option for my particular wrist size. And then beyond just size, there's going to be a few other options here. So the EPIX has two different levels, a stainless steel version and a titanium version. The stainless steel version comes with a stainless steel bezel and back with a Corning Gorilla Glass DX lens, and the titanium version comes with a sapphire lens with a titanium bezel and back. And then the stainless steel models come with 16GB of storage, and the sapphire editions come with 32GB. So what they do with these sapphire models is that since it has that much storage, they actually just go ahead and preload all the topo maps on there. With the stainless steel version, since it has less storage to deal with, you'll actually have to pick and choose which region you want to load onto the watch itself. And to download the regions, there's basically two ways to do this. So you can use their new map manager tool that can be found with the watch itself, where you can choose the region and then download it over Wi-Fi. But the faster way to do it is to actually just plug it into your computer using Garmin Express. And there's actually no main region that exceeds that 16GB of storage, but you may not be able to load like two big regions at one time. So let's say you'd have to choose either between North America or Europe if you have the 16GB version. With the 32GB version, you can have both. And then also with the Sapphire versions of the EPIX, this comes with a multi-band satellite system mode, which is able to leverage two different satellite frequencies at the same time, which in theory gets the best GPS accuracy. However, all the EPIX versions get an all satellite systems mode, which is able to leverage all 5 major satellite systems and automatically chooses one based on the availability and quality of the signal. And then they also all have a normal GPS mode as well as an ultra track mode, which reduces the GPS sampling rate to save on battery life. But real talk, when it comes to that whole multi-band all satellite systems mode, I don't necessarily think that's a compelling reason to get the Sapphire edition, where the all satellite systems mode on all these watches will do still a really good job. But if you want the prettiest GPS tracks, yeah, in theory, the multi-band mode will get you the best tracks. And then for the Fenix 7 lineup, you have 3 different levels. So you have the highest end Fenix 7 Sapphire Solar that comes with a sapphire glass lens plus solar charging. Then you have the Fenix 7 Solar, which also has solar charging, but comes with a lens that they call Power Glass, which is kind of akin to Corning Gorilla Glass. And then you have the base level Fenix 7 that doesn't have solar charging, and that has a Corning Gorilla Glass DX lens. And then when it comes to storage and satellite systems, pretty much the same deal here with the Fenix 7s, where the Sapphire edition of the Fenix 7 gets 32GB of storage, preloaded topo maps, as well as the multi-band satellite system mode. And then with the base level Fenix 7, as well as the Fenix 7 Solars without Sapphire, those come with 16 gigabytes of storage where you'll have to download the maps of your choice, and they don't come with a multi-band satellite system mode. But again, just to reiterate, all the Fenix 7s as well as all the EPIX models, they all have music, Wi-Fi, as well as map capability. And then one more feature I do want to point out here, which is a pretty big difference between the EPIX and the Fenix 7 series, is that the 7 series has the 7X option, which comes with a unique hardware feature, and that's where it comes with a flashlight. But getting to the most obvious difference between the EPIX and the Fenix 7 is going to be the displays. So there's a lot of things to consider here, such as using them on a day-to-day basis, just like as a smartwatch, using them outdoors in direct sunlight or even in cloudy conditions, and then the map experience as well, because that definitely makes a difference as well. And then there's obviously going to be battery life. So when it comes to the touchscreen experience about using these two, regardless of the colors, it seems to be about the same in terms of responsiveness, where both are responsive and both are pretty accurate for both taps as well as swipe gestures. The map experience is about the same too here when it comes to responsiveness, and both do a good job redrawing the map pretty quickly. I do find it to be a little bit slower at broader zoom levels when there's more things for the display to draw, but I do find them to be about the same on both. And then you can enable or disable a touchscreen on both of these in 3 main use cases, like just for general use, like using it as a smartwatch when not recording activities, during activities on a global level, and then whether you want to enable the touchscreen during sleep. And then all of these do also have the option of enabling or disabling the touchscreen for specific activities on a per activity basis. But when it comes to viewing these displays, I'd have to say that overall, in most situations, I think it's kind of hard to deny that the AMOLED display on the EPIX is pretty amazing. So if you're using these indoors, if you're using the always-on display mode on the EPIX, it's easier to see when you're not directly interacting with the device, where it's just slightly easier to see at off angles. Obviously, if you're not using the always-on display mode, you won't be able to see anything. And even though the transflected display is a little bit harder to read at off angles when the backlight is not enabled, well, it's still just an always-on display, like always on, like you can't even disable the always on display. And that's the beauty with these types of displays. But when the backlights are on both of these are easy to see indoors, but hey, the EPIX is simply prettier. It's kind of hard to deny. Where the transflected display wins out though is outside in direct sunlight. It's not that you can't see the display on the EPIX outside. It's actually very readable, but because there's a little bit of gloss to the glass, at some angles it can be a little bit less readable. Again though folks, totally usable, but it's just that the transflected displays just work a little bit better in direct sunlight, since direct sunlight actually makes the display brighter. However, the one use case where I would say that the EPIX maybe has an advantage is with maps. And these are the same maps as what you get on the Fenix 7. It's just that with a broader spectrum of colors that the EPIX display has, as well as the higher resolution display, it just looks better. The maps on the Fenix 7 are still great, don't get me wrong, but being able to see green as actual green, blue as a true blue, it just looks really nice. But the difference in displays translates directly to battery life, and that's the reason transflected displays are still around, even though they're not as pretty as AMOLED, is that they just consume much less power. So for these first battery life comparisons, I'll be comparing apples to apples here. Actually, Garmin may not like me using the A word, but anyways, I'll be comparing the mid-size Fenix 7 without solar charging, which has a 47mm case, to the EPIX, which also has a 47mm case, which also doesn't have solar charging. So for day-to-day battery life, just using it as a smartwatch without recording any outdoor activities, you can get up to 16 days from the EPIX without the always-on display mode being enabled, and then 18 days from the Fenix 7. So really not that far off. The kicker here, of course, is that that's not using the always-on display on the EPIX. If you do enable the always-on display mode, that brings it down to 6 days. And with the Fenix 7s, those transflected displays are actually always on all the time. Now, if we toss in the previous generation Fenix 6 into the mix, that actually gets less battery life in smartwatch mode than the EPIX without the always-on display mode being enabled. That's kind of interesting. And then when it comes to GPS battery life, with the EPIX, you can get up to 42 hours of GPS recording time without using the always-on display. And with the Fenix 7, you can get up to 57 hours. A pretty big difference there for sure, but again, if we toss in the Fenix 6 into the ring, that was only getting 36 hours. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is that if you're okay without using the always-on display mode on the EPIX, the battery life isn't really that far off from the Fenix 7 and actually better than the Fenix 6. So from my experience, I've been getting about 5 to 6 days out of the EPIX using the always-on display mode, even while recording some outdoor activities, as well as interacting with the watch quite a bit just because I've been filming and playing around with it a lot. Now, of course, there's the option of the solar models of the Fenix 7, and there isn't a solar option on the EPIX. But if you do add in some sun, this is where you can extend the battery life to 22 days as a smartwatch and up to 73 hours for GPS recording time. The solar charging absolutely makes a difference, but I guess a couple things to consider would be actually how much time you're going to be spending in the sun, as well as how much sun you get in the region where you live. Now, if you're considering the Fenix 7S versus the EPIX, there's obviously the size difference, but battery life will actually be kind of similar in a lot of cases, and in some cases actually a little bit better on the EPIX. If you enable the always-on display for GPS activities, well, it's not that far off with 30 hours on the EPIX versus 37 hours on the 7S, without solar charging, of course. The 7X is kind of hard to toss in the mix when comparing it to the EPIX at least, since it's going to be much larger and has a bigger battery. That difference is pretty massive across the board in all scenarios, so it's kind of tough to directly compare it to the EPIX. However, boy, do I like that flashlight feature on the X models. I didn't really think much of it when they first told me about it, but man, I've really come to like it. Okay, so when it comes down to it from a personal perspective, well, I've been wearing the Fenix 6 Sapphire for the last 2.5 years, and well, the battery life is actually very similar between the EPIX and the Fenix 6, so I've been perfectly happy with the EPIX battery life. But if you're an ultra endurance athlete, or if you're just somebody that doesn't want to worry about charging their watch that often, I'd probably more lean towards the Fenix 7 direction, and then even more so if you live in a place with a lot of sun, where the solar capabilities on the Fenix 7 series do make a pretty compelling difference. I've been wearing watches with reflective displays for years, and I've been perfectly happy with them, but after wearing the EPIX on one wrist and the Fenix 7 on the other for a while now, where both of these provide me with the exact same feature set and everything that I need, well, the EPIX is just nicer to look at in almost all situations. Okay, so that's all I got for you today, but if there's something that I didn't cover that you'd like to know about, definitely leave a comment down in the comment section down below. And on your way down there, do me a favor and hit that like button if you found the information in this video useful. And also make sure to subscribe for plenty more sports tech goodness that's right around the corner. Thanks so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.